Welcome to Ignite Your Confidence for women in leadership who want to speak up and stand out. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Here you'll get all of the tips and tools that you need to stand out with unshakable confidence. Let's jump into today's episode. Today we have a very dynamic guest, and Sabrina, I am so happy that we connected. And she is on a mission. She's got a huge movement. There's so many things that she has, and one of those is an incredible story. So we're here to learn more about you, Sabrina. Go for it and tell us who you are.
Yes. So my name is Sabrina Victoria. What I am mostly known for, or mostly proud of, I should say, is the kick-ass community of women that I am building. I'm building an enormous empire. I'm looking to build the largest all-female community on the planet. I am a true entrepreneur. I love working with other entrepreneurs, and what I'm really honing in on is building two areas. So I'm looking to build an audience of females who are looking to better themselves, looking to evolve, who are maybe in darkness and a struggle or a challenge, and they're trying to make their way out, along with another area of women who are mentors and coaches and teachers, to kind of mesh those two together in a beautiful container so that we can help each other and build each other up and network with each other. So it's been a wonderful journey. I've pivoted several times within my entrepreneurship journey, which I think a lot of us do. And it's been fun.
I love it. I love how you led with what I'm most proud of, because that is something that most of us don't really sit down to celebrate and really say, wow, I really acknowledge myself here. Pat on the back. And you're serving so many people. And I will say the thing that really stands out to me about you, and the constant theme from which we met, is your heart to serve, and not just by nice words, but you are so good at action, constantly serving, constantly referring. As I mentioned to you before we started recording, you have referred me to so many people, and it's your heart. It's huge.
Yes.
So
it's all about connecting, when we're connecting and we're building that web, that's the stronghold.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us your story. When did you start? What made you decide to do this? Anything that you want to share that would help us understand you better.
Yeah, so my story is the catalyst for everything that I do. I know that isn't always the case, but for me, it is the case. So I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. Right around 16 years old, I became boy crazy. Right around 20 years old, I ended up pregnant. Emphasis on the no husband. So pregnant with no husband, which is a huge no-no within that sect or religion. So I was cast out into the world, family, and basically everything I'd ever known. The entire community, Jehovah's Witnesses only associate with Jehovah's Witnesses. So I had no outside sources besides obviously my son's father. And it was just a whirlwind. It was a whirlwind of chaos. When I needed people, community the most is when I had none. And it led me down, baby daddy wound up leaving, which is a whole nother story, but did the whole single mom stereotypical thing of, negative $172 in my bank account at any given time, car being repoed out of the parking lot, eviction notices on my apartment door, suicidal thoughts, dealing with postpartum, and all of that revolving around having a child, and just not very nice thoughts going around with that, and just despair, total helplessness, totally in a very dark, challenging time. Mm-hmm. And within a year or two, I wound up running into a man who had money. I thought he was given to me by God. And it took me quite a while for me to actually recognize the signs, because I was so naive to the world in general. I had been living in this bubble of people are good. And it took me a couple years for me to really recognize and look around and notice that all of my independence was being stripped. So it just started out with, hey, why don't you why don't you live with me? I will help you with rent. I will live for you, you can live with me. And wound up giving up my place, moving in with him rent free. And then why don't you stop working at your place and help with my, company so we can build an empire together. And then he's barely paying me anything. He's paying me pennies to work 12 to 14 hours. I can't pay my phone bill. I go to him. I'm like, I can't pay
Ugh.
my phone bill. He's like, don't even worry about it. I'll pay your phone bill. Get rid of your phone. Use my phone. Same with the car. Same with the computer. Same, everything. And then before I know it, I look around. Emotional abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse is times 10. I have no money. And I'm like, I have nothing. I literally have nothing, including no voice, including no confidence, no self-esteem. And so one day, 8 years in, I'm on the floor in the bathroom having a total mental breakdown. And when I say mental breakdown, like there is a very, I think, few amount of people that understand like falling to your knees and crying out with every emotion inside of you, with just so much hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say that Google saved my life. I took out my phone out of my back pocket. I will never forget this day. I was literally on the floor wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I pulled out my phone out of my back pocket and I Googled, why is my boyfriend bullying me? Because I didn't know any other vernacular other than bullying. And the entire world of narcissistic abuse, toxic relationships, empathy, codependency, lack of boundaries, no voice, no confidence, no self-esteem, no money. And I just went down this rabbit hole for months and months and months. And I started to recognize that it wasn't just something was wrong with him and he was mean and he was bad. It was something was wrong with me.
Mm.
I never set boundaries. I never learned how to use my voice. I never stepped into my confidence or my power. I never understood what it meant for me to have financial independence or freedom or knowledge.
Yeah.
So I dove headfirst into all that goodness. And it's been a journey. I'm now out, obviously. I took me 4 years. I opened up 3 online secret businesses. I opened up a secret bank account. And over the course of 4 years, I was able to collect $50,000, which doesn't seem like a lot of money, but to me, it was like $1 million.
Oh my
And
gosh, I bet.
I left. Yeah, I left
Wow.
with my son, our clothes, and my bicycle. And I started totally over from scratch with a mattress on the floor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What was the span of time? I mean, first of all, let's just take a moment to say that's incredible. Your story is
Mhm.
incredible and it's so inspiring to so many people. And what was the span of, so you mentioned the 4 years. So were you technically married for 8? Is that what I heard?
I was never married. We were engaged. So part of the catalyst to me pushing forward was actually the engagement. So right around that same
Oh,
time of the mental breakdown, we also got engaged very soon after that.
oh
And
wow.
there was a segment of love bombing. So for those of you, your listeners who have been in narcissistic or toxic relationships, basically what happens is when somebody really has had it, the the narcissist or the person, he's not diagnosed as a narcissist, so I hate to say that, but the person who's being abusive can sense the power. So I'm reading and I'm diving into this new persona of like who I want to be. They sense, "Oh, I'm losing her. She's not the
Yeah.
same.
Because you're
She's
not,
not being
yeah, you're
submissive.
different.
She's being more powerful. She's talking about leaving more. She's talking about stepping out. She's talking about," so what they do is they love bomb you in order to bring you back in and bring
Oh,
control. So
and
right
wait,
around
is
when I
that an
started to
actual,
step out,
excuse me, Sabrina, is that an actual term, love bombing? Or is that
oh
something
yes.
like related to narcissists or abusive?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
I
a
didn't know
real
that.
thing that they do. So called a trauma bond. Ooh, we're teaching stuff today. So there's a trauma bond. There's a train that these people put you on, and it's an up and down. So at any given moment, daily, weekly, hourly, they're all different. They'll bring you from you're the worst, dirtiest, trashiest, ugliest, most disorganized, awful human being on the face of the planet, all the way up, sometimes in the same day, within
Mm.
the same hour, to you're the most beautifulest, amazingest queen, Barbie doll, sexiest, most brilliant individual I've ever had in my whole life. And I can't even imagine living my life without you. So it's this constant up and
Wow.
down, up and down. So when you're down here, you're doing everything you could possibly do and you're working your ass off and you're showing up at all the places and you're being optimistic and you're doing all the sex things so they can bring you back up here. And then they bring you back up and then they bring you down. And it's this constant roller
Wow.
coaster. When you're up here, this is called love bombing. So they love bomb
Hmm.
to bring you back up
And
so
then,
that you connect.
yeah. And then I'm curious about the connection from your childhood, if you're willing to share. Do you feel like this happened? This was a pattern that you were
Yeah.
familiar with?
Yeah. And I don't want to offend anybody and I don't know
Of course.
what your audience is, but with my experience with Jehovah's Witnesses just in general, it can be seen as a very toxic religion. You don't have a voice, you don't have a say, you don't have any individuality, you're not allowed to have curiosity, to be confident, to have high self-esteem really isn't a thing. And then you topple that with the patriarchy
Hmm.
and and what I saw growing up, not that my dad was anything close to what I endured. However, yeah, totally a pattern,
Hmm.
100%.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I think so many women in general have a challenge with boundaries because we're always looking to accommodate others, all the things. We don't want to rock the boat and that kind of thing. What comes to mind for me is, do you remember? And if so, I would love to have you drop us in the moment where you first set a boundary and what that
Oh
was
my
like.
gosh. Yeah, I have a whole boundary story. Do I know the first time I set a boundary? No, I
Yeah,
don't.
that's okay.
However, I can tell you that I totally sucked at setting boundaries when I first started. And I will tell you exactly why. Because to me, when I first started studying or acknowledging boundaries, to me, they were rules. I saw them as rules. And all the
Ah,
people in my life, including my family dynamic, rules were set in place with a mean, aggressive tone,
mm,
anger, silent treatment, um, aggression, aggressiveness, and assertiveness. So when I first started setting boundaries, I didn't know that you could just sit down with somebody and just have a nice, normal, loving conversation about, hey, this is what I would like for you to do. This would make me be able to flow better in my world. Um, I thought that they had to be like yelled and screamed
wow.
and total chaos had to happen during boundary setting. So it was awful when I first started doing it. It was awful.
Mm-hmm.
And I am honestly quite embarrassed at some of the situations that I caused while trying to learn to set boundaries. But
Ah, do you have any that you'd be willing to share that we could learn from?
I mean, my poor fiance, I mean, just insanity. I mean, I don't even know, just absolute craziness with just triggers, just things that trigger me, things that are triggered me, just me not knowing how to communicate correctly. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to
Hmm.
speak. I didn't know how to use my voice. I
Yeah.
didn't know that you could speak lovingly to somebody about your feelings. I thought that when you were talking about feelings, you had to cry like a psycho, or you had to
Wow.
scream like a crazy person. So yeah, I mean, the individuals that ended up in my life very soon after getting into that relationship, including my fiance, got a whirlwind of just nastiness and me not
Mm.
knowing how to apologize because I didn't want to apologize anymore either because I had lived for 13 years having to apologize for all this stuff that wasn't even necessarily my fault. So I
Oh,
also set
right.
this boundary of like, I'm never apologizing to anybody ever again. So not only am I setting boundaries super rudely and aggressively and angrily and possibly quite likely hurting people's feelings, but then on top of it, refusing to apologize for my behavior because I'm never apologizing anymore. So, it's been a journey, but
Yeah.
I'm doing so well now.
I'm so
The
glad.
there's been some huge evolutions in the way that I speak and communicate and talk and talk about my feelings and what's needed for me and what's good for us, right? As a
Mhm.
family, as a community. Because
Mhm.
when we're setting boundaries for ourselves, we're also allowing the rest of the world to move freely around us, not having to wonder, right? Where is
Yes.
her line? So
Right.
you're actually helping everybody around you when you're
Yeah.
vocal with what
It's
feels
so
good for
true
you.
that being a defined person, knowing what you stand for, what you don't. Well, I remember so vividly my first time because I remember talking to my therapist about how well, this was when I first left corporate in 2003, and I remember asking her, "Okay, I need to stop doing this stuff for free for my friends, like writing resumes and all that." And because I was in HR, so people were used to me helping them with career advice. And I remember so vividly, and it's funny, I've told it this story many times, but I still can remember how scary it felt to put that stake in the ground for myself. And I remember being so nervous to say no to somebody that I couldn't write their resume. And I was very happy with how it went, but she definitely, I'll just tell you the scenario. So she had asked me if I could write a resume, and I was figuring out, okay, what words am I going to use? How do I say this? And then I finally just came out with, and we'll call her Sue. Hey, Sue, I would love to help you. And that is now what I do for a living. So the that I'm happy to do that. Sorry, my little Siri thing just went off. Can you hear that? I'm going to take a quick
No,
moment. You don't hear anything?
no.
Oh, perfect. Okay. All right. So anyway, I was so happy with just getting the words out, but it felt so scary because I felt like I wasn't being helpful. I wasn't being accommodating. I grew up that you have to be this
Yeah,
good person that does
yep,
everything for everybody, which is so insane. But then I
yeah.
was happy with giving her an option. And but basically just to bring it home, I said, I'm happy to do that for you. I can no longer do it for free because that's what I do for a living now. And here's what I charge. Would you like to do that? And she said, no, thank you. But isn't it funny that even with our friends, it can feel awkward?
Yeah,
So that's certainly
yeah,
something that came up for me.
definitely.
Anyway, so I want to put ourselves in the position of the woman who might be in the same scenario that you found yourself in. And what would be the one piece of advice that you would help her with to get out?
Plan.
Mm,
You have to have a plan. I just posted this a week or two ago on my Insta. I think I'm on a reel. I just found like 15 years later, or maybe even more, I don't even know, on the back of an old notebook that I dug out on the very last page, a plan that I had started writing out. Like it was like the first draft of the plan of money.
wow.
I think that's one of the biggest issues. Actually, I don't think it is the number state that financial abuse is the number one way that people, not just men, but people keep other people controlled
Mm,
in relationships. And so yeah, so I had all these numbers and prices of things and adding and subtracting of like how much I would need to make and my side businesses and some ideas for side businesses and how I could start creating more money and double my money. And so yeah, it's planning. You have to, I think everything, I think that's the biggest issue. We have these surges of wanting to do things, of wanting to make movements, of wanting to pivot anywhere with anything. Could be a career, doesn't have to be relationships, could be anything. And we get these surges of thoughts and ideas and wonder. And then we fall back into complacency. We fall back into the mundane. We fall back into the majority. And I think one of the biggest assets that I have had, and I think I've had it my whole life, is I recognize my surges and I capitalize on them by making sure that I'm creating some sort of step-by-step. Is it always perfect 100%? No. I mean, I fell back in and out of that a few times. However, taking advantage of those surges, creating some sort of plan, starting to walk towards that, and taking the action necessary. So writing the plan and then taking the action necessary. It's always action,
Mm-hmm.
always action.
Mm-hmm. How did you financially, like how, if he was holding all of the money, how did you even get any?
The 3 online businesses. So the first thing that I did, the easiest thing, so I Googled, right? I'm all in amongst all of these YouTube videos and books and podcasts and audibles or whatever I was listening to back then. I don't really remember the names of all of it, but just grabbing all this information. I remember one of the best books was Tony Robbins' The Money Game. And then some woman named like Nicole Bassett or something called Rich Bitch, and all about money. And I'm like, I have to find money. Like I have to find my own money. So
Yeah.
I Googled 10 easiest ways to make money as a stay-at-home mom or something like that.
Wow.
And one of them was eBay. So I have no
Okay.
idea what I'm doing. My eBay story is hilarious, just to kind of give you an idea. So I know watching the time.
No, it's
So
okay. Please.
okay, cool. So I started eBay, and this is what gets people a lot of times. And this is what I'm talking about as far as just taking action. I never have any idea what I'm doing. Even in the business that I have now, I'm very frank with people sometimes. Like I'll just come up with these things and they're like, how are you doing this? I'm like, I don't know. I just thought of it yesterday. And then today I'm doing it. I
I
don't even
love it.
know.
I love that
So
about you because you're right. Action is needed. Yeah. Please
yes.
go.
So I started this eBay thing and I'm like, what's the easiest that he's not going to notice, where it's not this whole big thing? So I started to take my son's little like Dr. Seuss books. I'm like, this is easy enough. I can look like I'm cleaning his room. I'm on the floor. I'm just snapping pictures and it's not aggressive and he can be home or not at home. So anyways, I started listing all of his books. I'd list like maybe 5 a day. That was like the goal. What do I have to list? I have to list 5 things a day on eBay. I opened up the account. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea how to price things. I looked up a couple of other people on eBay to see what they're pricing things for, and they're pricing books for 99 cents on a bid. So eBay, you bid, 7 days to bid. It goes up 120, 130, 150, 157, $2, 209. And bid, you sell the book for 209. Okay. So I'm like, cool, I can do that. I'll list them all for 99 cents and we'll be good to go. And I'll make some money. So first book that sold, I'll never forget this, was How to Give a Mouse a Cookie. Is that the book?
I don't know.
How to Give a Mouse a Cookie. So $1.27.
Wow.
$1.27. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I will never forget this. I was like, this is so freaking cool. That's how you can tell how much financial distress I was in.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
that is how little I had, that I was freaking out internally at $1.27.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
powerful.
So get this. So I'm all excited. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me package it. I had bought the little packages on eBay, the little like envelope things, and I printed out the thing and I, put it on the package, and I'm looking at the postage versus the money, and the postage was like $2.99. So I'm in
Oh
a deficit of
no.
50 cents.
Oh
Yes.
no.
So I went to the post office, and within like 20 minutes, I went from like, oh my gosh, $1.27 to a deficit of 50 cents. And I was so heartbroken. I
Oh,
was so mortified. But that's the learning, right? This is what happens in life. This is why
right.
we don't try new things, because we're like, I don't know how to do the thing. I don't know how to do shipping. And I knew that even when I was doing it, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing with this shipping thing. Like, I don't even understand it. It's a total foreign language to me. When I lost 50 cents, did I get super passionate about figuring out how to do the shipping? Yeah. I dropped off the book and I'm like, I have to figure out this shipping thing. Like, this is important. I proved that I can make $1.27. Now I just have to figure out the freaking shipping. I got step 1 done.
Yeah.
Step 2 done. Step 3, step 4 is shipping. So I had to dive headfirst into how to do shipping, watch a few YouTube videos. I had to readjust all the books, right? I had like, I don't know, 40 books listed. So I had to go back into every single one of
Oh
them,
my
readjust
gosh,
the
40
shipping.
books. Wow.
Yeah. And then before I know it, I'm making $2, $3, $5, $6, $2,
Wow.
$1. And money's just slowly pouring in. And got the shipping down right. And I started listing clothes, started listing toys, started going to thrift stores. Plato's Closet, for those of you that know, Plato's Closet used to have way back in the day, like fill a bag for $5. So I would go
Oh,
to Plato's Closet and I'd get the most expensive
wow.
items. It didn't even matter if it fit me, just name brand stuff. And I'd shove it in a $5 bag and I'd list it. And so eBay was my first. And then I went to Fiverr.com
Okay.
in conjunction with it.
Yeah.
So started marketing, doing marketing testimonials, reviews, just stuff like that, just
It's
video
amazing.
type stuff. I had no idea what I was doing. I was charging $5, then $20, then $50. Then at the very end, I was charging $300 for my video edits because I had gotten so good at it. And
Wow.
then simultaneously, with the camera, I started doing health and fitness and I started selling my first little programs. Like I had no clue what I was doing, but I started selling like little recipes, books, and fitness things and little like workbooks PDFs that I would just send to people for 15 bucks, 30 bucks,
Yeah.
50 bucks. And yeah, just
That's
over a duration of time, it's 4 years, but over a duration of time, um, you know,
wow. And so tell us, jumpstart now, we've got just a few more minutes, but tell us how you transition then to what you're doing now.
yeah. So when I left, I started a YouTube channel. The YouTube channel was called Her Version. I wanted to tell my story. I knew that the pain, the despair, the helplessness that I went through, all of the inner child work that I had done, as far as being so grateful that each one of the Sabrinas that lived that year didn't commit suicide, didn't
Wow.
murder somebody, didn't kill her baby. Like there's so
Hmm.
many incidences for that year of Sabrina where she could have just gone off the rails. Like she could have just thrown her hands up in the air and just been like, F all of this. I can't. I just can't do life anymore. It was so dark in so many spots. And I didn't want that to go in vain. I didn't want those Sabrinas to be unheard. So I started this little tiny YouTube channel called Her Version, her being me, my version, our version of our story. Does it match my parents' version? No. Does it match the church's version? No. Does it match my ex-abuser or baby daddy? No. But it's my version. And we have a right for our version. And what happened is I started to tell my story. I'm still doing my health and wellness, like food and yoga and stuff like that. And women just started coming out of the woodworks in this little YouTube channel. I posted up on Facebook and they started saying, hey, I have a story similar to yours, or your story is great, or your story is
Wow.
giving me inspiration. 3 months later, I have women that are like, because I watched your thing on Facebook, I left. I left my husband. I didn't even know that he was abusive. And now I know for sure that I'm not
Oh
crazy. And
my
thank you so much.
gosh.
Yeah. So what I started to do is I started really connecting with these women. I started to say, like, hey, like I'm healing, right? Like I'm on my healing journey. I'm living my best life. I'm free. Like I'm making money. I've never worked for anybody since. And I started to say, hey, why don't you just come on and just like, I don't know, I guess it'll be a podcast. I don't know how podcasts are coming in. We'll do like a podcast. They're like, is it podcast audio? I'm like, whatever. We can do whatever we want. There's no rules. So they started to come onto my YouTube channel. And then I eventually, a few months later, right? Because I'm always evolving, I'm always curious, I'm always expanding. I think that's just so important. And learned how to podcast and then learned about calendars and learned about scheduling and fell into emotional, mental. I got certified in a bunch of stuff, mental and emotional health. And then I don't know, it just slowly morphed into this beautiful community. I've now had over 400 women on my stage, and we do impact panels, and I now host support groups, and really honing in on mental and emotional health along with financial power. And I
That's
think those
amazing.
two things are the catalyst for women really stepping into their confidence, into their voice, into their power, and making space for themselves. We can be
Yeah.
big, we
Yeah.
can be powerful. We don't have to
Yes.
be
Yes.
small, little, tiny things.
Exactly.
So
100%. Well,
yeah,
I am
so that's
so happy for you. It is I love hearing more about your journey and all that you are and are becoming and have become. It's super inspiring. So thank you for being here with us today. Tell us what you're promoting, how we can support you, and where we can reach you.
yeah, so the best place to reach me at is Facebook. I have hernation.life is my Facebook group. It's a expanding group of women who are all about doing better than they did yesterday. My website is sabrinavictoria.com, super easy. And the thing that I am promoting is our Her Mastermind. I run a mastermind group every Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern for female entrepreneurs that are looking to grab a hold of their financial independence while they are building their business.
Love it. Well, thank you again for joining us today, Sabrina. Always a
Thank you
pleasure.
for having me.
And that's a wrap of another episode of Ignite Your Confidence. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. If you're interested in more tips and tools around confidence, please join me over in my Facebook group called Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laus. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.